What's going on, friends? Welcome back to Forward Progress, live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network and powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I'm producer Jason. You can catch me here every Thursday to talk in-depth props with Hitman, preview Thursday Night Football's matchup with Eric, and we'll take a look at some Survivor Pool picks. Two more things before we get started today, guys. One more, like and subscribe the video, please. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps support the show. And we were a little lower on the likes last week, so let's try and get those likes up. And then finally, if you're watching or if you're listening on a podcast platform, make sure you leave a review. It really just helps support the show here today. And right before I bring Hitman in, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor over at Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook, offering competitive odds for 25 years. We love to preach line shopping on this channel, and with everyday competitive odds, Pinnacle should be one of your available sportsbooks. If you're looking to sign up and support the show, make sure you use code HAMMER when signing up to Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for 25 years. Bet smart. Bet Pinnacle. Must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly and not available in the U.S. Guys, today I am joined alongside Hitman, and Rob usually makes this joke, but I finally get to make it today. Hitman is in his car with us. He just came back from placing some props, so he is pulled over, so we're good with that. Hitman, how's it going? I hope your prop venture went well. What's up?
Yeah, going pretty good. I'm actually, I don't get the chance to go to NFL games really ever anymore. I used to before I was full-time betting, but get a chance to go to the Vikings-Eagles game tonight. So got some good seats. Hopefully don't get the crap kicked out of me wearing a purple jersey in Philadelphia. But yeah, everything's going good. Excited for got a lot of stuff to talk about with props for tonight's game.
I'm excited to get into it with you, and I like how we're oppo on jerseys right now. Me rocking the Eagles, you rocking the Vikings. Before we get started today with the props and with the Thursday night game in particular, Rob has been talking a lot on this channel about the environment that we're in the NFL, with it kind of being, I don't want to say he's calling it an unders environment, but a lot of sharp bettors were leaning towards the under in week one. And I mean, they had their opinions validated. As a prop bettor, how do you attack the prop markets when you know that the totals that are listed are going to come down a bit? And how does that affect the prop market?
Yeah, I mean, it makes an impact, but at the same time, the numbers typically are adjusted based off the expected points, expected yards, all that stuff. It's typically adjusted in the market. So it's not just as simple as being I'm not going to bet this quarterback to go under his passing yards because the total's 50 or something like that. It's more of maybe if I have a read on a specific game that's different than market, maybe say a game is at a 42 total and I think that 42 is cheap and it's going to be a higher scoring game, more passing. Then I'll try to look at, all right, maybe I'll play some passing overs in a game where the market's expecting to be lower scoring, but I don't think it's going to be. So it plays an impact. I will say that the prop numbers this week they've been lower than ever, to be honest. There's some low numbers out there. So it's up to the bettors to figure out, is it justified or is it an overreaction to a lot of unders from last week?
That's such a fair point here. And I was looking at some props as well. Listen, I'm not sharp. I'm not going to claim to be sharp, but I know that it's incredibly square to just only look at overs. And I was looking at these unders and I'm scared playing these. So I'm going to leave some time before I play these Sunday props. But before we get into the actual game itself, one more thing. The chat is just spamming right now with minus EV move wearing a Philly, an away jersey to a Philly game. Over under 13.5 batteries thrown at Hitman. And why are you a Vikings fan if you're from New Jersey or you're a Philly guy? What? So
which question you want me to ask? You want me to ask?
I don't know.
That one?
Yeah. Why are you a Philly?
Dude,
why are you a Vikings fan?
I'm not as loyal as people think. I was a huge Brett Favre fan growing up. So whatever team, when he was on the Packers, I rooted for them. When he went to the Jets, I bought season tickets. I was there every week. And he kind of finished his career with the Vikings. And then at that point, I was just like, all right, let me pick a team and stick with it. And I wasn't exactly a big fan of Aaron Rodgers at the time. So stuck it out with the Vikings. But to be honest, my allegiance is to my bankroll. I bet a look ahead before the season. I bet Philly minus 5.5 on a look ahead before the year. against Minnesota. Obviously, that's not looking that great anymore, but that just goes to show you where my allegiance is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of bettors feel that way. I'm not even going to say who I was a fan of growing up. I've relinquished that fandom, and I'm just like, hey, I'm a slave to the bankroll right now. That's what I'm a fan of. So, anyways, let's actually get into the game today. Let's talk some games. That's what everyone's here for. Thursday night football props. I mean, the best place for me to start here is uncertainty, right? Like, I like to start with uncertainty when we're talking about props because it's usually more advantageous for the bettor than it is for the books. And the biggest uncertainty here has to be the Eagles running back situation and their running back room. A lot of lines aren't being posted right now for some of these running backs, but I mean, it was Gainwell in week 1, right? We saw, to some dismay, Gainwell got majority of the touches. I mean, DeAndre Swift got 2 touches, barely even targeted. So Gainwell's out, but Swift is in. Boston Scott is in, and Rashad Penny, who was a healthy scratch, is in. And Nick Sirianni had this to say about DeAndre Swift. I think he can play both roles, no question about it. He'll be in that role sometimes where he carries the load for the game, but he'll also be in that role where he was last game, which last game being he got 2 touches. So odds right now, I couldn't find any rushing totals for Scott or Penny, but I have Swift right now at Pinnacle 32.5, minus 122 to the over, minus 109 to the under. His anytime touchdown is plus 153. Boston Scott's anytime touchdown is plus 280. And Rashad Penny's anytime touchdown is plus 280. So they probably see the hierarchy being Swift, Penny, and Scott. What do you see in this backfield? Is it a strict RB by committee and you just don't want to touch anything? Or are you going to plug your nose and maybe place a bet on this backfield?
Yeah, I think that the biggest impact on the Gainwell stuff was Penny and Swift. I don't think that Boston Scott was as big of an impact as many people think. And the reason for that is I think that Boston Scott last week was active for the game, mainly because he can play special teams. Mm-hmm. So that third running back, he's not going to get much usage on offense to begin with. He's a plus on special teams, so make him active over Penny. So I kind of anticipate that Scott's going to have a similar role to last week. So for me, it's more about trying to figure out, all right, is it Penny or is it Swift this game? I would say that, and again, I'm spitballing. I haven't been able to get much information on it. I haven't bet nothing on it yet. What I'm going to do is more wait and see. Maybe there's more reports that come out later. We can try to get some more clues and then we can make an actionable bet. But my guess right now is that Swift gets to start. Swift is definitely the more involved receiving back. And that if we do get to a point where Philly does get the lead and is trying to kill some clock, that Rashad Penny ends up being their closer. So that would be my read on the backfield right now. And I haven't placed any bets regarding it.
All right, I appreciate the transparency here. And since I've come on air and made these notes, it seems like Rashad Penny's total has been listed on Pinnacle. 29.5 is his rush yard total, juice to the over. So, I mean, him and DeAndre Swift lining right up. Me personally, I think we might be seeing a little bit more of Boston Scott than people expect. We had a similar situation 2 years ago, I think, where Miles Sanders got hurt and people were pounding the table for Kenneth Gainwell. Jordan Howard was in the backfield, and Boston Scott ended up. It was kind of like a 3-headed monster, but Boston Scott ended up scoring 2 touchdowns that game.
I'll add this, that if you're betting live, I think that maybe if Philly is up a touchdown or two, maybe you look at the Penny stuff, because I just wouldn't be surprised if he did end up being the closer for them.
Fair enough. Sticking here with injuries and the Eagles. I mean, they had a couple defensive players ruled out already. Fletcher Cox is questionable. Not sure his status on the game just yet. But safety Reed Blankenship and corner James Bradbury, both out. How do you think that will fare for the Vikings in the past game? I mean, they didn't look too hot last week, but they kind of had 2 unfortunate turnovers. How do you think Kirk can take advantage of that? And are you targeting anyone on the Vikings, like whether it be Kirk passing props or any receivers? Are you targeting anyone on the Vikings with your props?
Yeah, for the Vikings, they have some offensive line issues for this game. But if they do get protection, like this Philly back 7 is not looking good. With their linebackers were weak to begin with. You're without Nakobe Dean. You're without your starting safety. You're without James Bradbury. So it really comes down to pass protection. And I think the pass protection is going to be an issue. So I was kind of looking towards more the lower average depth of target receivers. I think that it's going to be a lot of short passes. And I did bet where I just was now, I did bet TJ Hawkinson over 47.5 and over 48.5 receiving yards.
Okay.
But it was a thinner play for me to where I wasn't going much higher on it. I thought that the receptions were probably the best bet on him from what the opener was, but the receptions have been juiced pretty highly right now.
Yeah.
So I think that the yards is slightly plus EV at
Okay.
47.5, 48.5, but it's a little thin.
Okay, so I see some 48 and 8.5s right now, spread across multiple sports books. 40.5 is sitting on Pinnacle, but it's at minus 132. There's a couple out there at the minus 110. Are you comfortable to play that for half a new unit? And I'll lock it in right now.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable at the higher juice, but if you're laying minus 110, that was the bet that I made. And
okay,
it wasn't a big bet, but it's worth a bet in my opinion.
Okay, I'm going to lock that in right now then. And then, so you said Hawkinson, and I mean, I'm looking at his receptions right now, 4.5, minus 175, minus 176 at Pinnacle. Like you're not sniffing that, right? That's like a pass for you.
No, little less juice. I don't mind paying juice. It's
of course, yeah.
Little less juice. It probably would have been a play of mine, but I think that the yards was a better alternate for a smaller bet for me.
Okay, fair enough. So I just locked in 48.5 over on TJ Hawkinson's receiving yards minus 110. So again, we talked about Hawkinson. Anyone else you like on the board? Like, are you looking at maybe like a KJ Osborne or Jordan Addison or anyone else in that offense? Maybe Alexander Madison receptions, anything like that at all? Or that's the only play for the Vikings offense you have there in the passing game?
To be honest, like I said, I think that the Vikings might have a little bit more trouble getting the deep passing game going because of their offensive line issues. So it was more the lower average depth of target guys I was looking for reception. So maybe if Jordan Addison's number keeps getting higher and higher, maybe I play under yards. It's been steamed up today a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm monitoring that market, but nothing else that I have played as of yet.
Yeah, when I checked yesterday, it was in like the high 30s for Addison here, and it steamed all the way up to like 43 right now is where it's sitting. And sneaky little thing, Addison actually only played 50, I think it was 50 or 60% of the snaps, was only playing 3 wide receiver sets. So maybe people are a little bit jaded by that touchdown that he scored on that big busted coverage play. But let's move on from there. I mean, last week, the Eagles left a lot to be desired. They covered, but like only barely, and they honestly did not deserve to win that game. And same with Jalen Hurts. He didn't look as prolific as he did last year. This is a Suma last episode on Forward Progress talking about like a bounce back spot. This is like a perfect bounce back spot for Jalen Hurts. Are you looking at anything props wise, whether it be his rushing total, his receiving yards, or even if he's just going to run it in for a touchdown?
I think that the pass, if you like Minnesota to stay in this game, I think that the Hurts pass attempts over has value.
Okay.
I personally didn't bet it, but just a lean. Philadelphia was really high in pass rate over expectation last week. And when the games have been competitive, they've been really high in pass rate over expectation. The problem has been that they've just blown out so many teams that he hasn't been much in the second half. But
fair enough.
If you think this game stays close, then I think Hurts over may be worth a bet.
Yeah, and it seems like the market is kind of expecting this game to be closer than everyone kind of thought when it opened, right? It opened +8, moved down to 6.5-ish. So maybe that's something. I'm seeing his total right now at 31.5. Best price I can find is towards the over is -120 at 31.5. That's a little too juice for you, or would you play that?
It's just a lean for me.
Okay, fair enough. So we'll stay off that, and if that number maybe comes down a bit here, you might want to look and scoop that one up yourself. Sticking with the Eagles passing game, the Baker Mayfield absolutely carved up this Vikings secondary. They made him look like a competent quarterback last week. So anyone I know you mentioned Hurts pass attempts. So are you looking at anyone's receptions? Like we're looking at AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Goddard, or even like a guy like Quez Watkins, maybe like anyone there for props?
I loved Dallas Goddard. It opened 38.5 receiving yards, which was a joke. I bet 41.5, 42.5, 44.5 on Goddard. It's just gotten to the point now that if you can find a 46.5 at some minus 120-ish, I would still play it. But anything higher, it's just moved too much from open. But we have the quotes about how Goddard was going to be more involved. In my opinion, he's one of the 5 best in the league. For him, it's just about getting volume. Kind of similar to George Kittle, that we know that Kittle is a great player, but he just doesn't get the volume some games. So on a game that I anticipate that he might have a little bit more volume, I thought that was a really good over, but 46.5, like minus 120 is my buy price because it's moved so much.
So I see a 45.5, 125 here. Are you comfy taking that at like half unit or?
Yep. No,
okay,
full unit. That would be good.
Okay. So I'm locking in right now. Dallas Goedert over 45.5 receiving yards, minus 125, and you can find that full unit. It's 47.5 at Pinnacle. So maybe if you're looking, you might want to look elsewhere if you want to play this number. So yeah, we're locking that in full unit. Last thing I want to touch on with you before I let you get out of here. I mean, the Vikings running back situation, I'm not a big fan of Alexander Mattison. His total right now at Pinnacle is sitting at 50.5 just before we started recording. It might have moved now, but I mean, heavily juiced to the under. I assume you probably have something to do with that. Maybe were you playing any Mattison unders, and is there a number palatable for you to play a Mattison under?
I didn't play it. I know some sharp guys that like under 50.5. For me, it's just, I heard before the season that Mattison was going to be like the real workhorse, and that Minnesota really liked him. And last week he had a lot of sharp money on his over. His prop number closed at like 66.5. For me, I mean, I lean under, but I'm just a little scared off about he just does get so much volume that I anticipate him getting, that you're really banking on him being inefficient if he's going to go under in this game. So for me, I just lean under on Mattison, 50.5 rushing yards.
Fair enough. And it seems like it moved a bit. It looks like the under is at like minus 115. So I might go play that personally, but at Pinnacle 49.5, minus 130, I think it's still a little too steep for me to play. Hitman, I'm going to do this to you every single week. Before we go, 3 quick questions, right? First one, any props you have an eye on for Sunday?
The bet goes off Sunday, but it's a season long. I like the Jets under 8.5 wins. You can find, I think, as low as like minus 150-ish at FanDuel. And I think that's worth a bet. I made that number 7.5. So obviously it's juiced, but when you correlate for the juice, the sports books are basically saying that the line should be 8. I'm at 7.5. Fair price on the Jets season wins. And I did make a good size bet on it just about an hour ago. So all right. Jets under 8.5 wins, minus 150-ish.
Beautiful. Minus 150-ish range. You can find that if you shop around. I don't think that's listed right now on Pinnacle, so shop around for that. And then second question, unofficial prediction for tonight's games. I mean, you're wearing a Vikings jersey, so I'm just going to guess you're going with the Vikings here.
I mean, I have a look ahead on the Eagles, minus 5.5, that I haven't bought out of yet. So I don't know. I'll say, I don't know. I think the spread's about right, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. And then last thing before you get out of here, first TD props that you like, unofficial first TD props. We don't recommend you betting this. I'm just forcing you into this.
Probably 19 out of 20 weeks that we do this, I'm going to tell you that I hate you for even making me put one of these out unofficially, because a lot of times my mindset is I was like, wouldn't the anytime touchdown have value if the first touchdown does a lot of times? But
yeah.
So, but for me, force play on it. Let's go with Dallas Goedert. We said that he was going to be more involved in the offense this week. We said that the Eagles have a higher pass rate over expectation in the first half. So let's go with Dallas Goedert, first touchdown.
Beautiful. Not locking that in anywhere and not playing that either. Just let everyone know that this is just for fun. Just going to your
I know
head.
People are gonna
do it.
People are gonna bet it anyway. They're gonna put their $10-20 on a long shot like that. So if you're gonna do it, Dallas Goedert would be my gun to head.
Fair enough, Hitman, enjoy the game tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. Any last words or?
Enjoy the game, everybody. Hopefully I make it out alive, and hopefully I'll be back here next week.
Appreciate it. All right. Drive safe, Hitman. See ya. All right. Awesome stuff there from Hitman. Hitman, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you. All right. We got our next guest coming on in a second here. But before we bring on Eric, a couple things. One, there's about 100 people watching and only 16 likes. Guys, come on, Rob is going to kill me if we cannot get this like past 25. Like, let's get some more likes on this video, please. It really helps me out. It helps the channel out. It helps us grow. If you feel like I'm doing a good job here, smash the like button. It lets Rob know that I'm doing a good job. If you feel like I'm not doing a good job, drop it in the comments below and tell me what I can improve on here. But yeah, so smash the like button. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for hitting the like button. Eric Eager is going to come on in a second here. Before we do that, want to let everyone know tonight at 8 o'clock, we will have a watch along with myself on the Hammer HQ channel alongside Rob Pizzola. You can find that at the Hammer HQ. Just type it in on YouTube here. And yeah, it'll be a watch along with myself, with Rob Pizzola, and we'll be joined by Sharp Clark, who had a massive week last week betting. If you go check him out on Twitter, and did a great job on the Tuesday show with George Silfides. We'll be also joined by Jeff Feinberg. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then the last guy who's going to be our guest will be Eric Eager, who is currently running a little bit late right now, but he will be with us shortly. Before we get Eric Eager on the show, though, I want to quickly talk to you guys about the bets I placed today, because I mean, listen, I'm not sharp. I don't recommend anyone tailing me here, but I think it's important for me to share with you guys what I've bet so far. I bet the Vikings +8 over, I can't say where. I bet the Vikings +8 on opening, all thanks to Rob Pizzola and Clive Bigsby. I do produce the Sunday live show. We are live at 8 p.m. at night. Look ahead show. Best place to get good CLV and get in on some early lines. Listen, I'm betting openers. I don't bet a lot of money on these games, so I have access to openers, and it's within my bankroll to bet on these openers. You can get some really great closing line value if you tune into that show. So guys, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that like button, and make sure you ring that notification bell to be notified whenever you go live here. And just to run through all the picks we've made so far today, Hitman came on, gave Dallas Goedert over 45.5 receiving yards, -125, and he found that at -125 full unit for him. Then I also he played TJ Hawkinson over 48.5 -110. You can play the half unit on that, so you can still find those lines are out there. I appreciate you guys tuning along so far. Eric Eager will be with us shortly, just running a tad bit late. I know he's also heading to the game tonight, and I wonder if maybe we can get like a little crossover on the Hammer HQ live stream between Hitman and Eric Eager. They'll be live with us in person. Should be a lot of fun here. I mean, I guess while we wait, I can field some questions. If any listener questions out there, want to drop your bets in the chat below, maybe, or any questions below while we wait for Eric here today. I mean, last week we had a lot of fun with Eric. Eric's busy not being an MD. Yes, he is not an MD. So last week we had a lot of fun here talking with Eric. I think the biggest thing that I really enjoyed was talking about our survivor picks. If you're in a survivor pool, I think it's a great show to tune in here every Thursday. We took 4 risks last week. We took Washington twice. We took New Orleans, and we took Denver. So 3 of 4 entries are still in. 1 got cooked, but I mean, according to Survivor Grid, they have around 29% of people eliminated from their pools. So looks like we're ahead of the curve, which is pretty good here. I was disappointed in Denver. They really let us down there. I mean, Vegas. I mean, both teams look bad. Vegas looked bad. Denver looked bad. I believe they only had like 6 drives each, and that's just like horrible. But note to self, not using Denver again for the survivor pools. Quickly looking at the survivor board today, though, seems like a lot of the picks are coming in on Buffalo and Dallas. Buffalo playing Las Vegas. Buffalo's at home, and then Dallas against the Jets. Dallas 9.5 favorites against the Jets, and Buffalo 9 favorites against Vegas. Personally, that Jets defense looks scary. So I was talking with Eric a little bit before the show what we would play for survivor picks. And I mean, we talked a bit about Giants, talked a bit about Dallas, but Eric Eager is here now with us. So I'll let him take that away. But before we get into those, we're going to get into a little bit about the game first. So from Sumer Sports, you can find them on Twitter at Eric Eager _. The VP of Sumer Sports. Make sure you head over to sumersports.com, SUMER sports.com. Check out all the great stuff they're doing there. Eric, how's it going, my man?
Jason, thank you for your patience, man. I'm like a block away from the stadium right now. I'm so excited for this game. I can't wait. And I think there's some opportunities here.
I love that. That makes me pretty happy. We can get some bets in. But before we get our bets in, you're going to be live at the game, and you'll be joining us on the Hammer HQ YouTube channel for our little live watch along for a little bit of the fourth quarter, I believe. And I just want to let you know, Hitman's going to be there too. So maybe we can get like a little Hammer HQ crossover going.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm excited. We're going to be on the field at the beginning of the game, and then we're going to go to our seats. So it's going to be fun, and the weather looks great. And I think there's been some line movement as well towards Minnesota after the Open, which has been I think interesting. I tweeted out today last year, week 2. Now it was Monday Night Football, not Thursday Night Football. That makes a difference. But the Vikings were just 2.5 win underdogs last year when these two teams faced off. Opened, I think, 8. Now it's down to, depending on when you look at some of the contests, it's 6. 6.5 seems like the market consensus, though.
Yeah, fair enough. And it's like riding that 6.25 over on Pinnacle that Rob likes to mention here. So it's around 6.5, somewhere between there is the correct line. But I'm happy that you said that, because right before you were about to come on, right before we went live, I messaged you saying like, hey, I want to talk about the market movement. So, I mean, before I have a question for you about the market movement. You saw it open at 8 and on Forward Progress, I'll mention it again, Clive Bigsby, Rob Pizzola live Sunday night, looked at Look Ahead Lines and looked at that 8 and said, that is moving. And I was able to get in early. And hopefully if you tuned into the show, you were able to get in early as well. What do you think about the line movement there? Is it just, like you said, it's just too much in favor of the Eagles right now? Or was there something that happened week 1 that maybe people don't believe in the Eagles as much? I don't know.
I don't think it's that as much as, when people look at the Vikings and see that they lost to Tampa Bay, a team that, lined at the beginning of the season at 6.5 wins, kind of that only team in that NFC South that really doesn't have, like, no one really gave a chance to win that division. Everybody's talking about the Panthers and the Saints and the Falcons. I think when people saw that the Vikings lost to Tampa Bay, they immediately scooted that thing out. And it was weird because the Eagles won and covered against New England, but did not do it in as impressive a fashion. So I think when the number came out, it was maybe more reflective of the Eagles win and cover, the Vikings lose at home and as a favorite to Tampa Bay, and a favorite, by the way. There's a little bit of like reinforcement bias too here, where as everybody knows, like Tampa Bay got money on last Sunday. Down, that thing opened around like 6, 5.5 or so, closed around 4. And so I think that there's also just a little bit of confirmation bias as well, where they're like, yeah, we thought Minnesota wasn't going to be particularly good, and they weren't. But when people look back at that box score, Jason, they look, and Cousins threw for a lot of yards. The defense, was not terrible, I guess. And if you run that thing back a bunch of times, I think the Minnesota Vikings don't turn it over 3 times. I think they end up winning that game outright, at least, as opposed to losing it outright. And so cooler heads prevailed. I made the game 6.5. I made the game 6.5 kind of going into last week. I didn't really upgrade or downgrade. I probably, seeing this thing at kind of 6 somewhere, that means that people might have been in the same as me, but downgraded the Eagles kind of at the end in their power ratings. I didn't really see anything off of last week's game to move me off of what Minnesota was. Minnesota's a streaky team that plays a lot of one-score games, and this past week they got unlucky, where all of last year they've gotten lucky. So I support the move down to 6.5 or so. I think if it were to dip below 6, I think you would probably see some Eagles money, but who knows? I was surprised that Rob and Suma and a lot of other sharp people really liked Minnesota last week when it got to 4. Yeah. I think that those same people would probably back Minnesota, if this thing got all the way down to 5.5 or so, I think those same smart people would probably like the Eagles.
Yeah, fair enough. Like week 1, prime overreaction week. So I can see why those openers opened as high as you did, like you mentioned here. But I'm going to put your feet to the fire right away here, because my concerns coming out of week 1 were not towards the Minnesota Vikings. It was actually more towards the Eagles, right? And listen, you said this past offseason on this channel that Dak Prescott, you believe, could be the best QB in the NFC, right? And that's not to say you think Dak is like, that's not to say you think Jalen Hurts is bad. Sorry, you just think Dak is good, and you're higher on Dak than majority of people. But it made me think a little bit more of like what Jalen Hurts is, and maybe was last season more towards the higher end of the Jalen Hurts outcomes, right? So last week, I was really nervous watching this Eagles team. Their only offensive touchdown came from a turnover on the 25-yard line. They struggled to move the ball downfield for a majority of that game. I mean, I have a couple questions for you here, right? So first, is there any validity to me being worried about this offense? Second, how do you feel about Brian Johnson and how he performed as a play caller for the Eagles against the Patriots? And then third, am I leaning too much into overreaction week? Could this just be a perfect storm of overreaction with Bill Belichick, who is a strong defensive coordinator, with a strong D, who has months to prepare, plus the Eagles getting a new offensive coordinator? So if you can answer all those three.
No, I think you're not overreacting. I mean, look, I think people probably took last year. I mean, so going into the Super Bowl, I think like one of the funnier things was the fact that the best win that Philadelphia had all year was against Detroit in week 1 in a game that they didn't even cover the number, and they won outright in Ford Field. And, they play an amazing game in the Super Bowl. Hurts plays an amazing game in the Super Bowl. And I think that we all forgot that, right? And we all kind of over-indexed on the eventual record for the Eagles. And it was still the best team that they beat last year was a Detroit Lions team that was, a good but not great football team. And I think that Brian Johnson, there was a lot of kind of conservative play calling, even in that penultimate drive where, the Eagles really had to, pray that Kayshon Boutte's last, foot went out of bounds. Hurts ran the ball up the middle and fumbled the ball. And every time I saw Hurts run on Sunday, I thought he looked a little bit slow. I thought that the offense just kind of looked a little lethargic. They ran the ball on some long yardage situations that I didn't think was particularly, sharp. So no, I think he's, Brian Johnson's got a lot to prove. I think on defense, they really did a good job rushing the passer. But now you look at the New England, every single one of their starting offensive linemen is hurt. So how impressive was that? Now you go to Minnesota though, Garrett Bradbury's out, Ed Ingram, I'm sorry, not particularly good. Maybe they get those same advantages tonight. And maybe we don't necessarily find out how good of a defense they are until they face a team like Dallas. So it's interesting. I like I said, I agree with the line move, the way that it happened. Especially 8 just really stuck out at me. I think that a lot of that is from a lethargic weekend, especially relative to the two teams that I think many people believe are the best in the NFC right now, which is Dallas and San Francisco. Yeah. Philadelphia in week 1 wasn't in that class. So how do you index off of that? It's a great question. I expect the Eagles to play pretty well tonight. I expect, football is a matchup game, and I think that they match up really well with the Vikings. But if they don't get last year's Jalen Hurts, it might be tough.
Yeah, fair enough. And you talked about the matchup here. Total of this game is set at 49 and a half. It's actually ticked up to 50, but it's showing that true number of 49 and a half with the 108, 106 to the under and the over respectively. That's the second highest total on the board this week, right? Elite weapons on both sides of the ball, quality quarterbacks, quick pace play callers. Combined all these things with injuries on the Eagles defense and the Vikings defense looking like very piss poor last week, to say the least. Can you see this game heading into a shootout at all? I'm looking at the Pinnacle all over right now. I believe it was at 54 and a half ish. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can't go under in this game just because of what you said. I think, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. I mean, he threw for a lot of yards on Sunday. If he didn't throw some interceptions, I think that game would have paced up a little bit and gotten to its own over. And, I think you can't count. I mean, one of the props I'm going to talk to you about is interceptions for Cousins. I think that there's going to be a little bit more conservatism out of Cousins. I think there's going to be more underneath stuff. But I think the Eagles are maybe conducive to getting beat like that with how they are at linebacker, especially with Nakobe Dean out tonight and on IR. I think that this game plays well to the over. I don't know if I can get there with it, but I don't think I can go under on this game tonight in Philly.
Fair enough. We're in the under environment, so I had to ask you that question here with all the totals kind of seemingly coming in too high. So next up for you, I have a question about the Vikings and their pass catchers and the Eagles, how they defend. So last week they struggled to cover passes over the middle. Mac Jones kind of carved them up a bit over the middle. How do you see the Vikings and Kirk Cousins picking them apart, along with the injuries that the Eagles have to their secondary with Bradbury and Blankenship being out?
Yeah. So early in the week, the TJ Hawkinson, anytime they give you 4.5 catches on Hawkinson anywhere close to flat, you have to take it. Now, the way that I look at depends upon, what you count consensus right now, but Hawkinson over 4.5 catches is now near minus 200, depending upon where you look. And I know, as I was, getting back to my hotel, I noticed Hitman took 48.5 over on Hawkinson. That to me is a very good, that's a very good wager. The one that I kind of like too, when I think about this, I think about Cousins threw some interceptions last week. He threw 3 interceptions in this matchup last year. How are they going to avoid that? They're going to throw to Alexander Mattison. Alexander Mattison got a lot of last week's carries and a lot of last week's work. He's at 2.5 catches. I'd take that over all the way to maybe minus 115, minus 120 on that one. I think that's another way. I think the Hawkinson over catches prop is maybe too rich at this point. I like where Hitman went, but once he bets that thing, it's not going to be available the way that you want it anyway. So I think you pivot here to Alexander Mattison. There's a chance that Ty Chandler does some things, but I don't think that Kevin O'Connell or anybody really trusts any of the other running backs on the roster right now the way that they trust Alexander Mattison. So I think he gets to 2.5 catches the same way that Ramondre Stevenson last week. It was like Ramondre Stevenson only had like 25 yards rushing, but he made some plays over them, especially in the second half of that game. And I think Alexander Madison's a similarly talented running back as Ramondre Stevenson.
Okay, interesting. I like that. And we'll talk about unit size in a second when we get into our best bet segment. I kind of want to segue this question into the Minnesota wide receiver group. I know you answered it by talking about tight ends and running back, tight end and running back here, but I'm a USC guy. I love Jordan Addison coming out of college. I love watching Jordan Addison in college. I thought he was a fantastic talent, but I think there's an underrated story happening right now between KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison fighting for that second wide receiver time, right? Addison actually only played 3 wide receiver sets. So he wasn't at all in 2 wide receiver sets. Have to assume that's because of his inability to block. KJ Osborne, I think, is a better blocker. You can probably correct me if I'm wrong on that. Addison only played 53% of the snaps, all in 3 wide receiver sets. But the weirdest thing to me is that he just wasn't in the slot. He was only in the slot a third of the time, so 33% of his snaps. So he's kind of all over the field here. So how do you see their usage as the year goes on? Is Osborne kind of a sitting duck to be usurped by Jordan Addison, who I think is probably a better talent? Like, how do you see this second wide receiver group shaking out as the year goes on?
Yeah, I mean, Kwesi Adolpho-Mensah is a very smart GM. I think he knows that if he plays Osborne and Osborne were to leave in free agency for a reasonable contract, somebody like a Christian Kirk, like if he puts up numbers similar to the last 2 years and you see some ascension, you're going to be looking at his numbers and his pro similarly to Christian Kirk, who Jacksonville was able to get for $20 million a year.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, that's a comp pick thing. So I think that the Vikings are going to try to recoup, draft capital by letting him walk. And so I do think they play Osborne a lot over Addison, at least for about half this season. And then Addison just plays that third wide receiver role. They have Oliver, they have Hawkinson, guys that they've paid a lot of money to. I think that's the most expensive tight end group in football. So I think Addison's upside is going to be limited every week by the fact that it's kind of a numbers game in the Minnesota Vikings skill position group.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that insight here. Always like to hear more about Jordan Addison. So last question before we get into our best bets here. The Eagles RB room, massive question mark. We saw Kenneth Gainwell get the majority of the starts here in the beginning. Obviously injured this game. I mentioned this to Hitman. I link in this current group to what we saw. I believe it was against the Lions in 2021, where Miles Sanders got hurt. The Eagles had Jordan Howard, Boston Scott, and Kenneth Gainwell as their active running backs. And Boston Scott seemed to get the majority of the work in that game when the game actually mattered. He got 2 touchdowns. I think he rushed for like 60-ish yards. Do you see something similar happening here where Boston Scott could be the lead guy, especially on goal line work? So my theory is that I think he might be doing that. So I found him at plus 300 for anytime touchdown. That was my theory. You think I'm wrong? You think I'm right? What are your thoughts? I feel like
I think you have to root for variance in that backfield. So yeah, I think you're getting a decent number there. I think the question becomes like, is the Minnesota secondary so poor and Brian Flores so aggressive? Do you get that many goal line plays, or are most of the touchdowns going to be long range plays to where Boston Scott is not a factor. That's the one question I think. I think in a normal game that makes a lot of sense. I think Minnesota, you might have to reduce it a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm just praying for like an AJ Brown out on the 1 yard line so Boston Scott can come in there. All right, moving on from there. Let's get into our official best bets for today's game. You brought up Madison over 2.5 receptions. I found it at -115 if you shop around, -131 on Pinnacle right now, so you can find it at a better price here. So, how full unit for you, half unit? What are your thoughts on the Madison?
Yeah, let's do a full one there.
Beautiful. All right, locked in on a full unit, and then we got. You mentioned Kirk Cousins interceptions. I got to find Kirk Cousins here in a sec. There we go. Kirk Cousins interceptions. I mean, you're looking towards the under here, correct? So I think we're looking at Kirk Cousins not to throw an interception here. Best price I can find on market is +110. If we lost Eric here for a second, I'm going to lock it in for him because he texted it to me that it's playable up to, I believe it was up to -105. Yes, up to -105 is what he would play that to. Currently, +101 on Pinnacle. So if you don't have access to any other sports books and you have Pinnacle, you might want to go play this on Pinnacle. As Eric said, he would probably play it as well. Eric, if I think we missed you here for a second. So I mean, it sucks because I want to get into Survivor with you. Maybe we get a tweet out in a second. Let's give Eric a second here to see if he can come back. All right, it looks like he is gone for sure. So I'll just bring up the Survivor screen right here with you guys and talk it through. Eric sent me some notes on who he likes and who he doesn't like this week. Reminder, we took Washington. We had 4 picks to start the year. This is kind of the game we're playing. 4 picks to start the year. And we took 2 Washington, which I was really happy. We took the 2 Washington. 1, kind of a sweat down the stretch, but hey, it worked. We burned a team that we probably weren't going to use down the road. We took New England, and then we took Denver. Denver, putrid performance. Very, very painful to watch that. Who knows if we'll take them down the road with our 2 Washington or our 1 New Orleans pick that we had. But, I mean, Denver really let us down that game. It looks like the chalk pick right now, according to Survivor Grid, looks like it's Buffalo, it's Dallas, and it looks like it's San Fran as 3 of the top 4 picks right now. We talked about Buffalo and Dallas a little bit before. San Fran going in to the Rams at home. So, I mean, it could be an interesting. Perfect. Eric Eager is back in here with us. So I was just talking about Buffalo, Dallas, and San Fran in Survivor. Why don't you tell us a little bit about those 3 teams, and if you want to use one of our 3 picks or all of our 3 picks on those players or on those teams, sorry, for Survivor.
Yeah, for me, I think Buffalo to me is a good play in this one. I think if you are going with, kind of this idea that I don't know how highly owned Buffalo is going to be in the contest because Monday was very jarring. The fact that they lost that game, despite the fact that it was Zach Wilson and not Aaron Rodgers for the majority of the game, I think will keep them from being, one of the top ones. It's hard to predict, but so that's one where I think that it's one that I would consider as one of the 3. San Francisco and Dallas to me are going to be the higher ones. I think Dallas is a clear choice when you think about what that defense did to the Giants on Sunday Night Football. But I'm worried about this defense, and I'm also worried about what Dak Prescott represents as a quarterback who is a very good quarterback, as we talked about earlier, but can be a turnover kind of quarterback. And this Jets defense, if you get into a rock fight with them, you might be stuck, needing that particular game. And just like Buffalo last week, them not being able to get enough, scores on the board to be able to win that game. So I wouldn't touch Dallas, even though I think it's a natural pick here. I think San Francisco could be another one. That one I probably would put on the list just because over the years, and I documented this back when I was at PFF, was, the Niners do so much motion. They do so many things that that keeps the Rams from doing what they want to do defensively, namely disguising coverages. So things like motion and things like shifts and stuff keep the defense or keep the offense from being able to, be predictable and things like that. Cisco has basically covered the spread every single game against LA for like the last 3-4 years. So I do like San Francisco in that one. It's a road game, but they travel pretty well. So yeah, to me, Buffalo and San Fran are two picks that I think should be contenders for Survivor. And then beyond that, like whether it's Detroit or New York, I think to me, I would pick New York over Detroit just because Seattle has a good enough quarterback, even though the offensive line is out, even though Detroit was, decent the other day rushing the passer against Kansas City. I think if you give them a week to prepare in Seattle for that game, I think that they can patch it up. It's a lot harder to deal with offensive line injuries when they happen in the moment versus when you see them coming a week away. So to me, I would take the Giants. I know it's a hold your nose thing. I know it's a square thing going against Arizona every week. But I do think, this line is a little bit lower than it would have been had the Giants not gotten the shit kicked out of them on Sunday night against Dallas.
Fair enough here. And so I'm going to pair it up. So we're treating this like a real Survivor pool. We use 2 entries on Washington, 1 on New Orleans. I'm going to put one of the New York Giants, and I think we're going to go Buffalo, San Fran, New York from what you said there. And I like those 3 if you're cool with that. And I'm going to pair up the New York with the Washington one. So let's burn 1 Washington entry and put New York as that next second week pick. And then one of Buffalo or San Fran. Do you want to pair that one with who do you want to pair with Washington? Who do you want to play with New Orleans here? What do you think would be a better pair, or just tossing it up to me?
Yeah, let's go Buffalo with New Orleans, and because Buffalo with New Orleans, and then San Francisco with the other one.
All right, so Buffalo's going with New Orleans, San Fran with Washington. So 3 of our 4 picks still on the board. Hopefully we come back next week with 3 picks remaining as well. Eric, before we go, 2 quick questions. I'm doing this to you every single week. Gun to your head, so no one bet this. Unofficial prediction for tonight's game. You have the Eagles, you have the Vikings.
I like the Eagles here at current price.
Okay.
I think it's weird because if you look at the history of Kirk Cousins, especially with Minnesota, he's hardly ever more than a touchdown underdog in a game. But they're beneath that now, so I think that this can happen there. So I'm gonna go Philly if I had to go gun to my head.
Beautiful. And then last question: first touchdown props that you like.
I like Josh Oliver. The other tight end. I think if the Vikings get the ball first and march down the field, I think that Josh Oliver is certainly a guy that is in the mix. He's playing a lot, and I'm going to go with the OG Rob Pizzola. His secondary tight end first touchdown prop as the one that I like.
I love that, and you can find Oliver at 50-1. Not recommending you go bet it because it's a gun to your head situation, but I mean, hey, might as well let you know. Anyways, Eric, enjoy the game. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you probably later today on the on the Hammer HQ live stream. Have a good rest of the day. See you, Eric. All right, that was Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. You can find his work at Sumer Sports, SUMERSPORTS.com. Tons of great work there. Tons of great information. If you're like a stat junkie and like to look more into football. So that does it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate each and every single one of you watching live right now, sticking around throughout the entire show. I appreciate you guys smashing that like button. So I'm not going to ask again. Okay, I lied. I'm going to ask again. Smash that like button. Subscribe. Hit that notification bell to be notified every time we go live. We are live Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, we have George Silfidis live alongside Matt Freeman from Fantasy Life, John Legazer from The Athletic, and Jack Miller from Establish the Run to talk player props with you guys. We're going to talk player props, TD scores, injury fallouts, everything you need to know from the Friday practice report. You do not want to miss this show. And then coming up on Sunday, we have the Pizza Buffet powered by Pinnacle. Rob Pizzola, I mean, you know the drill. He'll walk you through his favorite games on the slate. And at 11 o'clock, right before the games start, he's going to go through and share his favorite bets that are still available on the board. So if you have not bet anything for Sunday and you're looking to do so, Rob Pizzola is your guy. And then finally, Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, we have Forward Progress Live, which is our look ahead show. We look ahead, we look back at the past week, what happened, what it was, and we take a look at opening lines as they open live on air. Pinnacle has been nice enough to open their lines at around 8:30. So we'll be able to have a look at the general market, what plays we like, what plays we think will move. I was able to scoop up a +8 because Rob mentioned it on the show. So you're going to get some good CLV if you tune in. I mean, you won't get a lot of money down on it, but hey, CLV is CLV. You'll take that. So anyways, make sure you tune in, guys. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. And if you're watching on audio platforms, listening on audio platforms, make sure you leave us a review. It helps out a lot more than you think. So for myself, for Eric Eager, for Hitman, this has been Forward Progress right here on the Hammer Betting Network, powered by Pinnacle. Good luck on your bets, everyone.